Mini episode 378 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.info.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Welcome to FDH Lounge, mini episode number 378. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris. We are very pleased to bring back to the show the guest that we've had on a couple of times thus far. Speaking with him previously about his book, Wrestling with the Devil, his very excellent memoirs, the story of how he turned his life around and really kind of leveraged some of the things that have happened to bring some positivity to this world and all the good works that he has done. And the last time he was on the show, he was our celebrity NFL analyst heading into the NFL playoffs this year, helping us break down the NFL tournament. So we'll take a look at what has transpired since then, a look ahead to Super Bowl 48, and speaking of leveraging, to again leverage his knowledge of the world of football. As somebody who had played at the collegiate level at Penn State and Miami, somebody who had been in the professional level with the CFL, the USFL, and a little bit at the NFL level as well, and is, of course, best known for being, among other things, a two-time world heavyweight champion in WCW, holder of many other championships as well, one of the most decorated stars of the modern era of professional wrestling. Could only be speaking of the gentleman that we know as Lex Luger. We're very happy to have him on the program here today. Lex, great to have you back on the show. Thank you so much for being back with us today.
Wow, thank you. What a stellar intro. My goodness,
well,
thank you.
Sure, can never say too many good things about you. You've been very gracious to us. The times you've been on the show, you've always been great for conversational purposes here, and while we're doing that, let's keep the generous spirit going. I'll start by saying you and I came out of it looking pretty good as far as our predictions for the AFC. We said going into that first weekend, it really felt like we were just marking time waiting for Denver and New England. And I have to say, it's almost a little bit unusual that we were right about that, because the football segments that I do on a weekly basis during the season with my guy, NFL handicapper Kyle Ross, he has pointed out to me, and he's usually right and I'm usually wrong whenever we disagree on this, that the chalk really doesn't tend to prevail as much as the public thinks. You go back to last year, Baltimore upsetting Denver and breaking up the Denver-New England matchup we thought we were going to get at the time. In a strange way, because it seemed so obvious, the odds were against us being right, but we actually were right about that. And, it really was Denver and New England just a cut above everybody else and going into that big AFC championship game last week.
Yeah, I am super, super excited about this game. I think it's the most excited I've been about a Super Bowl game in a long time. I love football, and I'm a huge fan, but I am just charged up about this game. What a matchup. Man.
It truly is, and you saw what Denver did against New England last week, and it just shows you how ready they are to be in this game. They were small favorites at home. Some people thought that maybe they should have been bigger favorites, and their standing on the field last week, I think, probably validated that. It was a little bit more of not exactly a boring game, but a little bit more anticlimactic, I guess, than we thought it was going to be based on how New England was doing coming into it. On the NFC side, were there any real surprises going through the playoffs that you could see? I know that in the first weekend, you and I differed on the San Francisco and Green Bay game, and very understandably, I think from your point of view, because Aaron Rodgers probably is the biggest difference maker in the league. At least that's what the odds makers will tell you. But I'm sure that wasn't a huge surprise to you, because I know you've got a lot of respect for the 49ers. Were there any real surprises leading up to that San Francisco-Seattle game last week that you could see?
No, gosh, we had the top four records in the AFC NFC game. Now we got I believe the two top teams definitely in the Super Bowl game. I think it makes it all the more enticing, an anticipation of watching.
Well, it's very interesting that there were some allusions as we were going through the NFC playoffs in particular to your old day job here. First of all, your old friend Ric Flair with the whole thing there with the 49ers and the controversy with the Carolina Panthers. And it was kind of funny. Bill Barnwell from Grantland, who I think does some of the best analysis of anybody out there, also had some of the best humor, I thought, on the subject when he said Steve Smith was shocked by what happened. Did he never watch any of the old angles with Sting back in the day? So that was Ric Flair doing what Ric Flair, the character, always did. But do you get any sense from watching that and from going to what happened after the NFC Championship game with Richard Sherman? There's a lot of people that are making Brian Pillman circa 96 analogies. Does that ring any bells from back in the day when you were watching or participating in Four Horsemen promos, what that guy did on the stick at the end of the game there?
I gotta say, it was pretty shocking. For a lot of people who were watching, just the expression was priceless on Erin Andrews' face. I mean, you could see she's like really taken back by his intensity. It would have been definitely a vintage Horseman type interview without a doubt. There was intensity and fire in his words, and they definitely caught him up in the moment of the competitive juices flowing without a doubt.
Well, it was a huge pop culture thing, a big meme on the internet, obviously in the first 48 hours or so at least, and some very creative person, I'm sure it's still out there on YouTube, somebody spliced together a thing that made it look like Mean Gene Okerlund was getting set to interview him and spliced him over Erin Andrews. You know, that's the kind of video editing, Lex. Yeah, somebody should win a Nobel Prize for that. I don't know if that's a category that they have, but that quality of video editing was just absolutely awesome. And he's kind of toned it down a little bit this week with the gravity of the matchup because, again, when you look at it, and you said this, and it's what excites me also. You and I are definitely coming from the same perspective on this. My excitement for this game from an X's and O's perspective, I'm racking my brain trying to think when's the last time I was this jacked up for something because, again, it's ultimate offense versus ultimate defense, and you take it to the passing game as well. Denver's so elite in their passing game, and Seattle's so elite at stopping it. Do you have any thoughts, whether it be specifically as far as your philosophy of football against great offense versus great defense, or in terms of the matchups here? Do you have any kind of a sense in a vacuum who prevails in a matchup like this one?
I do have my feeling of that, but to backtrack just for a moment, I was watching some of the interview day just, I think it was Tuesday, whenever it was, or Monday, and to see the contrast on the same team of Sherman and then Marshawn Lynch, it was almost too good to be. I mean, what a classic! You can hardly get a word out of him. And then we got Sherman. That was I found that just my own personal sense. I thought it pretty amusing. They were both on the same team. The Super Bowl is full of all types of personalities, and there's on stage there's some crazy stuff that comes out of those interviews sometimes leading up to it. But getting back to the topic at hand, the excitement. I mean, this is the first time we've had. I was just reading the other day. This is the first time we had the number one defense matched up against the number one offense in the Super Bowl since the 1990 game between my poor Buffalo Bills and the New York Giants, which the Giants, of course, won when they won I forget what it was, 21-19 or something like that, or 20-19. But what a classic matchup. I really feel I'm surprised. I'm actually pretty encouraged by, I think Denver's defense has really stepped up the last few weeks. If there was a weakness compared to Seattle, obviously, Seattle, I mean, has an incredible defense. And but I really think Denver's playing better defense now. And I think in the matchup, I think there's a weather factor, but also when you take the physicality of the pass defense on Seattle versus these timing routes that Denver runs, I think one of the key things to watch in the early game is Seattle able to disrupt? Because, you know, Peyton's a timing guy. The only time he struggles is if you can get him out of his timing. He is so good. I love Peyton Manning. I mean, well, you talk about a record year. I mean, my gosh, what do you have, 55 touchdowns and 5,400 yards or something crazy? That's ridiculous. After the injury, what a great story. But to get back to what I'm saying, he's a rhythm guy. He's the best at it. But I think in Seattle, they have the potential to really disrupt those timing patterns early in the game. I do think that Denver's going to struggle to put the kind of points up on the board that they're used to. What are your thoughts?
That's a great point. Absolutely, Lex. I don't hear enough people talking about that just in general about, and it applies in some different sports as well. I've seen it to a decent degree in terms of watching hockey sometimes, particularly some of the great puck possession teams out there. If you disrupt the rhythm, you just throw everything into a really jumbled up kind of a state, and that's what Denver could be looking at Sunday. And a great point also, too, from you about the number one offense and the number one defense, because I was reading about that as well. And it's really a situation where both teams are lugging around almost two championship belts, if you will, because they're both the tops in points and in yardage. We've seen where it's been one or the other, but we haven't seen both previously. This is where it's unprecedented as far as the greatness of these teams. Denver's the best at scoring and in terms of yardage, and Seattle's the best at stopping both.
Yeah, we even got the getting back to two championship teams. A little bit of wrestling background. I love that Legion of Boom, because that Legion of Doom is one of my all-time favorite tag teams. So I'm like, wow, this game is really right up my alley.
Oh, it's a great one. It's an amazing matchup, and you were talking about Peyton Manning as well, and that was something I wanted to ask you about. And again, you're somebody who really strikes me when you look at this kind of stuff as having a real grasp of history and people's place in history. I come from a similar perspective and have a similar interest, so I really want to pick your brain on that. When people are looking at Peyton Manning and his legacy this week, I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about that. This would be his second championship if they get it done. If they don't, then he's 1-2 in Super Bowl games, and he's still trailing Tom Brady by 2 Super Bowls. So in terms of his career and how we look back at it and where he stands in the pantheon of quarterbacks when it's all said and done, how big is this for him in terms of his place in history?
Well, I'm such a big Peyton Manning fan. He's going to go down history as one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. But I think we better not use – I think he made it clear for now he's not ready to hang up the cleats yet. He doesn't want us to use the word legacy. You know, I listen to him. He's so eloquent. One of the things I love about his interview, but, man, I don't even know quite sure I know what the word legacy means. I'm only 37 years old. Maybe when I'm 70, he was saying. I love the way he handled that. So he so he may not want to use the word legacy. However, what an incredible thing. I think, isn't it? He'd be the first. Did you just say that? I think, or I read somewhere, he'll be the first NFL quarterback, if he wins this game, to ever lead two different teams to the Super Bowl title?
Yes, as a starter. I believe it's been done if a quarterback has been a backup with one team or the other. And off the top of my head, I'm thinking Craig Morton might have been a guy that might have done that. I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, how'd you pull that one? Hey, bravo.
Yeah, I don't know, Lex. I'm not. I'm thinking it might be Craig Morton, but yeah, it's been done. But again, if you're not the starter on two Super Bowl teams,
guy, though.
Yeah, exactly. If you're not the man, then it doesn't really count. I mean, there's one ring where you've benefited from being part of the team, and there's one ring where you've led the team, and you're absolutely right. Peyton's got the chance to do it, and it's kind of an interesting little piece of trivia, too. The last time, and I think it's the only other time in the last 20 years, when we had both number one seeds meeting in the Super Bowl, that was Peyton Manning going up against the Saints. That one didn't go so well for him a couple of years ago. So it's just kind of a fluke, isn't it, that he ends up in both of these number one versus number one matchups, and it's so rare, but it's happened to him twice now.
It is. You talk about his career. I mean, this is such a phenomenal story. Come up at injury, where even his own team thought he was done. His better football's behind him. But now be in this position. I mean, look what he's done to his teammates around him. Look at, Demaryius Thomas. Over 1,400 yards receiving, and Eric Decker, 87 receptions. My gosh, their tight end Julius Thomas had, I think, like one reception his first 2 years. Now he had 65 receptions, 12 TDs. Talk about a guy, Wes Welker comes in, has 73 receptions and 10 touchdowns. Talk about a guy who makes everybody else around him better. Even though Sean Marino has like a comeback season, I mean, elevate the play of everybody on that offense and the whole team. Pretty remarkable guy, I have to say.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about that with everything that they've done. An absolutely historic year for that offense. But you look at it, and you were talking before about this, and I come back to it because I think it's a very important point about rhythm and about the key to beating a juggernaut like that, disrupting the rhythm, and that is what Seattle does to everybody that gets in their path. And you look at it again.
Bennett and Averill off the edges, man, I'm telling you, along with that secondary, that combination, wow, it's you're right. I mean, absolutely. Talk about some disruption. Those guys, I think sometimes don't get the credit that they deserve. Bennett and Averill, those guys are a force to be reckoned with, definitely, for that O-line on Denver, without a doubt.
Well, the one big media storyline that was out there that was omnipresent before we even knew who were going to be the two teams in this game, I think that this is the rarest of all birds, the first in 48 Super Bowls where it's a cold weather northern Super Bowl. And you look at how it sets up here on paper, theoretically, the weather being what it's going to be. The worse it gets, you got to figure the better it is for Seattle. The weather would be a factor in helping to disrupt this offense as well. Do you subscribe to the notion, because it sounds like Mike Ditka kind of did from some interviews this week, that the weather is a disruptive and an unwelcome force and something that could really kind of distort this classic matchup here? Or do you kind of take a more benign view of it that, the weather's going to be what it is and the best team's going to win regardless?
I think both teams go into the game with that mentality. However, my take, personally, I think the weather will be a factor. They're estimating that the winds will be 20 miles per hour, gusting maybe to 25 or 30. I think Peyton Manning, as much as we've just said about how great he is, the only time I've seen him struggle with the elements is when it's windy. He doesn't throw an Aaron Rodgers, perfect type Sparrow anymore, as good as he is. His ball's got a little wobble in there now, and we're talking about 20, 25, 30 mile per hour winds with timing patterns. I think that the weather could definitely play a factor, and I think in that regard favors Seattle.
Definitely, because it plays into their style of attack, and no question about that, and about how they're trying to, as we've said, break up the rhythm and to try to disrupt that. In a battle like this, and this has been the case really every time the last couple of years when you've had one elite unit clashing against another one, I think a lot of times the winner of the game ends up being determined by the third best unit. So ultimately, as we're looking at the other side of the ball, as we're looking at the Denver defense that, as you said, did a pretty good job against New England, that is a pot roast guy rising up and shutting down the running game and in a way that I'm sure they're going to be looking for him to do against Marshawn Lynch. Although it's kind of a different thing to do it to him than it is to do it to LeGarrette Blount, no matter how hot LeGarrette Blount was during the playoffs. This is another magnitude altogether. You've got Seattle, who their offense has been kind of flagging really ever since the Arizona game. It hasn't been bad per se, but there's been some question about whether the league is kind of catching up to them, the fact that they're not predicated really on stretching the field at all, which is very rare in this day and age of where teams are looking to go downfield as Denver does. Seattle has kind of clung to their way of doing it offensively. It's worked well until the last month or so. It hasn't worked badly enough to take them out of the playoffs here. But as you look at this, two units that people are raising some question marks about, especially relative to the greatness of the other two units, Denver defense versus Seattle offense, which do you think has the chance to be the third best unit on the field on Sunday?
Boy, once again, I think possibly Seattle's offense, and I think we all know they work as a unit. You just stated it very eloquently, but I'm going to take Russell Wilson and Marshawn Lynch. Boy, he is a beast on the ground. He sets, I think, the tempo for that team offensively and defensively, the style of play, the way he attacks, and amazing. guy, a fun guy to watch run. And then Russell Wilson, he may not have been on top of his game the way he'd like right now at this stage of the season. But let's not forget, I mean, the first guy since, I think I read today, 1950 to have 24 regular season wins. That's the most by any quarterback since 1950. And this guy's his first 2 years. He's also, I read, the only quarterback to post a passer rating of at least 100 each of his first 2 years. So let's not underestimate the abilities and also that intangible leadership capabilities. Here's a guy who came in training camp as a rookie, undersized rookie quarterback, who was already named the starter. What was it, the third preseason game?
Right.
I mean, so outstanding leader character. I've watched some interviews and the way he conducts himself, what he does in his community, as the type of person he is. I think he's got the total respect of his team. So even though he may not have performed the way he'd like, or the offense might not be clicking quite the way they'd like it to right now, I think he's the kind of guy that steps up in big games because he has great leadership qualities. And that's when leaders really step up. So if you're asking that question, I would have to say I would give the edge to Seattle's offense as the third best unit out there.
I agree with that, Lex. I think that's correct. And again, Russell Wilson deserves so much credit for everything that he has done thus far. And again, while he's not of the same physical stature of Colin Kaepernick, there are a lot of similarities, really, offensively and defensively, when you look at the Seattle and the San Francisco teams. And when you go back to the Super Bowl a year ago, and San Francisco really kind of broke the mold. We hadn't seen since maybe about, I think, the 2005 Steelers, a defense that was probably as highly ranked as the 49ers defense was last year, and, of course, the Seahawks defense this year even better. So, and then from there, you probably got to go back to the very famous 2002 Bucks and the 2000 Ravens that people will lump in with some of the great defenses of all time. So are we starting to see a trend kind of flipping a little bit here? San Francisco in the big game last year, Seattle this year, because, again, this is the most wide-open era in the NFL that we've ever seen. The rules have been changed to protect the passing game, and the ratings and the popularity of the game has continued to soar as they've done that. And these two teams have really kind of bucked the trend the last 2 years. It's a copycat league. Are we seeing the start of maybe another trend coming here? Do you see it as kind of an anomaly? How do you see that shaking out as far as elite defense coming back in football?
Well, I'm old school. I think, kind of like a Mike Ditka, I think the physicality of teams that play kind of angry defensively, I don't think that's ever going to go out of style. And Seattle does that. The 49ers do that. And I think teams that have a defense like that are always going to be in the running every year. So I don't think that's that kind of old school football where the teams like with that kind of defensive schemes and talent are ever go out of style. I mean, I know we're going to kind of like almost like a 7-on-7. The poor linemen in football, not that the line of scrimmage isn't as important as ever was, but lately with this wide open football. But look at the physicality of the secondary at Seattle. So I don't think physical, talented defensive play is ever going to go out of style. I think it's always going to be there, and it's going to be important.
Absolutely. That's what the last 2 years have really kind of shown, and you got to think that, again, in a copycat league, there's going to be a lot of teams looking at the kind of success they've had and looking to emulate that trend. There's been another trend that's been going on throughout the sports world the last couple of years that I have to imagine you must have a very interesting take on. And I don't know that it necessarily originated with Aaron Rodgers when they won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, but he got up there on the podium afterwards with the big gold belt that I think Ric Flair had arranged for that to possibly happen. Everywhere you look right now, this trend is out there. I think Vince McMahon sent specialized belts to Max Scherzer and Clayton Kershaw, I think, when they won the Cy Young Awards this past year. So as a guy who's actually held one of those belts here, and again, we've talked about this before, you were always very laid back about your spot. You never politicked for it. Whatever. Are you kind of amused to see guys that have this kind of greed for the status of a symbol of a worked industry? Do you kind of laugh when you see that, or what are the thoughts that go through your head? Because I'm guessing they must be very interesting.
Oh, I'm tickled. I love it. I think every kid, like sports kid, grows up thinking about being a world champion or be on the podium, and I think it goes back to not just to wrestling, but also boxing. And I go way back. I'm old school, the Muhammad Ali days, and just being the champ, Mike Tyson days. And I just think that so many guys grew up. LeBron had a tweet the other day, James in the NBA, about how much, about loving the championship belt he saw, and how much he loved watching wrestling. Grew up and named a bunch of the guys in his era he watched. So I think that's kind of like a real cool kind of swag status symbol. Even if the team does the belts or whatever, to be up there and have that something about that belt around the waist, man. It's very cool for us, our male egos, I guess you should say. So I love it. I think it's hilarious. I think it's great.
I agree completely. Yeah. And, again, I've never been a designated world champion as you have been, but I'm out there with the legions of people who at one point in time or another in our lives, whether it be growing up or whenever, who have held one of these things, even if they're not as bejeweled as the actual item. So, yeah, that's something I think we can all relate to as guys, is wanting to have something like that. And, yeah, it's a trend that shows no signs of abating in the sports world. Anytime we have you
on that, I give you a personal note. When I do speaking engagements and people want a picture afterwards, I'll bring in one of my championship belts with me to be in the photo, and I think they'd rather take the picture with the belt than me. You see a bunch of 40-year-old guys, 34-year-old guys that grew up watching me, who can't. I mean, they're like little kids holding that belt. Oh my gosh, it's heavier than I thought. Man, they get so excited about holding that belt in the photos. It's like I'm not even there anymore. So
well, I'm guessing
just to back up in a real life example of what we're talking about here. So it's pretty cool. But I didn't mean to get us off topic.
No, that's great. I would guess that the common compromise would be, we'd love to have a picture with you, Lex, but can I please hold the championship? I know that's the tack I would take.
No doubt.
May I please be the person to hold it? And, that is awesome. And, anytime we have you on, we've always got to pick your brain if there's any developments that have happened with any of the institutions that you've been associated with over a period of time. We've talked, I think, the two previous times about Penn State and everything there, your thoughts on your time at Happy Valley, some of the perspectives that you picked up. The new head coach, James Franklin, coming over from Vanderbilt, where he was a very, very big success, at least in a relative sense in the SEC, taking that program from complete nowheresville to relevance and really doing well. It seems to be a pretty good honeymoon going on there, a sense that he fits in well, a guy who's from the area, who grew up a big fan of all things Penn State. What are your perspectives on this guy coming in and taking the torch from Bill O'Brien and trying to lead them back into sustained excellence?
Good hire. Good, solid hire. I think you already stated some obvious reasons why he's a good fit. I think being a head coach now is almost like being a CEO of a corporation now in a lot of regards, and I think he creates the culture. I think he created an incredible culture at Vanderbilt to be such a doormat in such a competitive conference like the SEC, and to be able to become as competitive as they did in a short period of time, I think gives a lot of credence and credibility to the culture he creates. So I think they made a solid hire. I was personally kind of rooting for Mike Munchak, but I think they got a real good hire. I think they'll be very, very successful there.
Absolutely, and somebody that they should be able to hang on to. Bill O'Brien, again, was long rumored to want to go back to the pro game, and so it was maybe not a complete surprise that things went the way that they did, particularly when his buyout kept getting adjusted over a period of time. The inevitable shoe dropped, the job came open again, and James Franklin, from my perspective, I tend to agree with what you're saying. He looks like a very good fit there, and somebody that's going to come into a very competitive Big Ten Eastern Division next year and look to do a very good job. And again, it's a very, very interesting time there. at Penn State, and it was almost a ripple effect between your two institutions, wasn't it? Because there was some thought that Al Golden might be looking to take the Penn State job, and that ended up not happening. But what are your thoughts on the present status at the U there? Do they have some stability under Coach Golden at this point?
I think they do, and I think I could have testified, give testimony to Al Golden, don't do it, just based on the weather, because I was in Happy Valley in the winter there, and that's why I went back down to this the Sunshine State, because man, that wind cuts through the Happy Valley in the winter. When I was going to class, does not lend to the name Happy Valley, and I froze my butt off. So I think Al Golden made a great decision of staying right where he's at with my Hurricanes down there in sunny warm South Florida. I think he's doing a great job, and I think he can continue to progress and once again create the right culture down there that we need. So I'm a big fan of his.
Well, at least the odds are that the weather is going to behave a certain way, Lex. I can say, monitoring this, as I have family in the North Georgia area, I guess things down there are not at the moment in the predictable manner for winter, needless to say, down there. I hope that you're doing well and keeping warm and avoiding some of the worst of what's going on down there, because the news is making it seem like a real zoo with the way that storm hit.
It is. It's been crazy, but I snicker because I'm from Buffalo, New York, so we get a dusting of snow here and the whole city's paralyzed. I'm like, really? Come on now. So I'm kind of humorous. All my friends up north are making fun of us down here.
Absolutely. Well, as a lifelong Clevelander, so somebody who's shared that Lake Erie shoreline, yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying about that. By the way, you mentioned about Buffalo. I have to ask you this as well. Your familiarity with your hometown team and following my Cleveland Browns hiring away Mike Pettin as the new head coach, the defensive coordinator. It looked like he did a really good job with the defense this year, at least relatively speaking. What were you able to gauge about how the Bills' defense performed this year, and what, if anything, that might tell us about Coach Pettin going forward?
Well, he's definitely making some aggressive staff moves. I think I like that. I think that they've got some great young talent defensively. Us Buffalo Bills fans are about as excited as we can get being in the residing in the AFC East. We can with those stinking Patriots every year. But I'm a lifelong Patriot hater, especially the last decade and a half with the Belichick Brady combo. But we're about as excited as for the near future here in the Bills than we've been in a while now. It's been a long drought for us.
It has been. It has been. And as a Browns fan, I can certainly relate. But, yeah, Buffalo, a great football city, really almost like a sister city to Cleveland as far as some of the hardships that have been suffered. And I can say that, again, nobody deserves it more than Bills fans for everything that has been suffered over a period of time. You alluded earlier to the Scott Norwood Super Bowl there, the one where the Bills had the best offense in the league and the Giants had the best defense in the league. And a little bit of a prelude heading into this weekend. And that's the thing, Lex, that while it's, to bring it full circle, while it's been, this is the first battle of, as we said, the best offense in terms of yardage and points versus the counterpoint on defense. There have been some where it's been one or the other. The best, I believe in that one, it was the best in terms of yards with the Giants and the Bills. And the defense has generally come out on the upper hand in that. I believe it's been 3-1, 4-1, something like that, when the defense has been number one in either of the categories. So as far as a prediction goes for this weekend, or a lean, or whatever you're comfortable putting out there, I will say I like the underdog Seahawks in this one. I'll say 19-17, that the Seahawks rack up enough field goals to edge by, and that they do disrupt the Broncos' offense successfully. It sounds like from some of the things that you were saying, you may be leaning in the same direction, but take it away. What are your thoughts for an outcome for this game?
Well, I know I shouldn't do this, but you're right with my leanings as far as if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I might lean towards Seattle, but I'm going to be a real fan on this, and I'm rooting for the Denver Broncos, and I'm picking the Broncos 24-21.
Wow. Okay. All right, nothing wrong with that.
That's my prediction, my bold prediction for the day.
Well, it's tough to go against Peyton Manning, as we alluded to, and Demaryius Thomas.
The two mistaken the Lake boys, Cleveland and Buffalo, disagree on the final outcome.
How about that? Well, regardless of our disagreement on the game there, always a great conversation with you, Lex. It's a pleasure to be able to discuss anything with you, whether it be the wonderful world of football, the awesome world of the pro graphs, anything and everything. And again, I wish you the best of luck with everything still with, again, hope that your book continues to do well, Wrestling with the Devil, the true story of a world champion professional wrestler, his reign, ruin, and redemption. And again, great job with everything you've got going on there and all the positive things that you're putting out there to the people. Always a pleasure to talk to you on the show, Lex. I certainly hope to do it again here some point soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, it's an honor and a privilege. Thank you. I always enjoy coming on. You guys do a great job, and go Broncos.
All right. Thank you so much, Lex. A true pleasure, as always. And thank you all for tuning in today, everybody, to FDH Lounge mini episode number 378.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and The Periodic Table of Elements.